Cale adjusted the straps of his backpack as the small shuttle descended through the thick clouds of the planet below. He had flown across star systems, following the orders of the Interstellar Council, to capture a creature that had caused panic among the neighboring settlements. Every report he had received painted the being as something terrifying, a monster that could destroy entire villages if provoked. Cale had trained for missions like this his entire life. He was confident, he was skilled, and he trusted his instincts. Yet as the shuttle broke through the dense mist and the landscape unfolded beneath him, Cale could not help but feel a twinge of unease. The forest was unlike any he had ever seen. Trees with translucent leaves glimmered under the faint sunlight, and streams of pale blue water curved like silver ribbons through the valleys. The air was filled with soft hums, almost musical, and the ground beneath seemed to pulse gently, as if alive. This was not a place of destruction. This was a place of quiet, secret life. Cale stepped onto the soil, feeling the softness under his boots. He activated his tracker, a small device designed to detect unusual energy signatures. A flickering red dot appeared, indicating the presence of the monster. He moved carefully, every sense alert, scanning for movement in the misty forest. The reports had called it dangerous. It had strength. It had cunning. But Cale noticed something strange. The energy signature was not chaotic or violent. It was ordered, almost like it was thinking, calculating, waiting. He followed the signal deeper into the woods. Mist swirled around his ankles and dampened the quiet sound of his boots against the ground. Birds, or creatures that resembled birds, called softly overhead, their tones haunting and unfamiliar. Cale paused, listening. It felt as though the forest itself was watching him. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a mix of excitement and curiosity. Hours passed, and Cale found himself at the edge of a clearing. There, standing motionless in the center, was a figure. It was human-like but strange. She wore a suit that shimmered in soft shades of green and blue, blending with the forest around her. Her hair fell like liquid silver down her shoulders, and her eyes glowed faintly. Cale froze. He had expected a monster, something wild, perhaps even terrifying. But this was a person. The figure stepped forward, raising her hands slightly. "Please," she said, her voice soft, almost musical. "Please don't hurt me." Cale's mind raced. I'm not supposed to hurt you," he said cautiously. "I was sent to capture you." She shook her head quickly, her expression filled with desperation. "I am not a monster. I have never hurt anyone. Please, you must understand." Her voice trembled, and Cale could see the fear in her eyes. Fear, but also something else. Hope. Cale lowered his tracker. "Then why did the reports call you a monster? Why did they want you captured?" "They lied," she whispered. "The station that brought me here, they wanted people to fear me. They said it was for my safety, but it is not. I am trapped. I am not free." Cale felt a chill run down his spine. Every part of his training told him to be cautious, to capture and report, to follow orders without question. Yet something in her tone, in the calm desperation in her voice, made him hesitate. Humans were trained to detect deception, to recognize the truth in subtle ways, and Cale sensed that she was telling the truth. "What's your name?" he asked, stepping closer but keeping his distance. "Myra," she said. "Please, Cale, my name is Myra. I am not a monster. I need to leave this place, and I cannot do it alone." Cale studied her for a moment. She was fragile, yes, but there was strength in her eyes, determination, intelligence, something that told him she had survived not by brute force but by wit and careful thought. Humans like Myra, Cale realized, were not defined by the labels others put on them. They were defined by their actions, by their choices. "Why did they trap you here?" Cale asked. They experimented," Myra said softly. "They created stories to keep others away. They said I could help their research, but I do not want their control. I want to explore, to learn, to live as I choose. I am not a danger to anyone, but if I stay, I will never be free." Cale felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had trained for decades to capture dangerous beings, but here was a person in need of help, someone intelligent, capable, and misunderstood. The lines between duty and morality blurred. He could follow orders, capture her, and return to the council with a successful mission. Or he could listen to his instincts, the same instincts that had made him a skilled operative, and make a different choice. "Do you know a way out?" he asked. Myra shook her head. "I know paths, hidden ways through the forest, but I have never escaped the perimeter. The station has systems, guards, and alarms. I cannot do it alone." Kale nodded slowly, thinking. His training included escape scenarios, stealth operations, and problem-solving under pressure. Perhaps together they could find a way. Perhaps humans working with humans, human ingenuity, determination, and courage could solve what machines and fear could not. Then we'll try, he said, but you have to trust me. I trust you, she said quietly. They began walking, Kale leading the way, Myra following closely. The forest seemed almost alive, guiding them with subtle changes in light and sound. Kale realized that the trackers he had relied on were no longer needed. This was no mindless creature. Myra was intelligent. She could navigate this world, and he could help her do it safely. As they walked, Myra told him about her life. She spoke of the research station, of the humans who had experimented with alien technology, of the loneliness she had endured. Kale listened, absorbing every word. He was struck by her resilience. Humans had always adapted, he thought. They had survived challenges that no other species could endure, not because of strength or speed, but because of creativity, empathy, and courage. Myra embodied all of that. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip behind the misty hills. Kale realized they needed to find shelter for the night. Myra guided him to a hidden grove where the trees formed natural walls, their leaves shimmering in the fading light. There was a small stream, clean and cool, and the air was filled with soft, calming hums. Kale felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. "This is safe," Myra said. "They will not find us here." Kale nodded, setting down his pack. "We need to rest, then plan our next move, but I have to ask, why do you trust me so easily?" Myra smiled faintly. "Because I can see that you are human. You think, you feel, you question. You are not blinded by fear. You are capable of understanding, and that is rare." Kale felt a warmth in his chest. It was strange to hear someone speak of human qualities with such admiration, but it also filled him with pride. Humans had always been underestimated, dismissed as fragile or weak. Yet here was proof that human traits, compassion, ingenuity, courage, could overcome fear and misunderstanding. As night fell, they sat by the stream, sharing stories and plans. Kale realized that his mission had changed. He was no longer hunting a monster. He was discovering a truth that few would believe. That fear often creates monsters where there are none, and that humans, in their infinite adaptability and empathy, could shine where others faltered. In the distance, faint lights flickered on the horizon, the research station still active, still unaware of their departure. Kale felt a mix of determination and excitement. Tomorrow, they would begin the real challenge, escaping the planet and proving that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or technology, but its heart and mind. For the first time in years, Kale felt hope. And for the first time, he realized that sometimes the greatest missions were not those given by orders, but those chosen by conscience. As he drifted to sleep, Myra beside him, he knew one thing with certainty. He had not come here to capture a monster. He had come here to witness the courage of a human soul longing to be free, and in doing so, he had glimpsed the true power of humanity itself. The first light of dawn filtered through the translucent leaves, casting soft patterns across the forest floor. Kale woke slowly, stretching, while Myra stirred beside him. The air was cool, carrying a faint scent of the river and the flowers that grew in hidden clusters along the banks. Despite the uncertainty of what lay ahead, Kale felt calm. The forest, with all its mystery and beauty, seemed to embrace them, hiding them from the eyes of the research station. Myra was already awake, sitting near the stream, her silver hair glimmering in the morning light. "Good morning," she said softly, smiling. "We should start soon. The station's patrols will become more active as the sun rises." Kale nodded, securing his backpack and checking the tracker that had once led him here. It still blinked faintly, showing the last known locations of the station's monitoring drones. But he no longer relied on it fully. Myra's knowledge of the land was far more valuable than any machine. They moved carefully, the ground soft beneath their feet. Myra pointed out the hidden trails, explaining which plants could give nourishment, which streams were safe to drink from, and how to read the subtle signals in the forest. The bending of branches, the color of leaves, the hum of the air to detect danger or guidance. Kale listened intently, absorbing every detail. He realized that while humans might not have natural powers like strength or speed beyond other species, their intelligence and awareness could make them capable of incredible things. As they walked, Myra began to share her story. "I was born here in the station, but not like the others," she said. Her voice carried no bitterness, only clarity. They designed me to understand alien technology, to communicate with systems that no one else could. I could predict outcomes, find solutions, create connections that seemed impossible, but they never wanted me to make choices for myself. Kale glanced at her. And that's why you ran? Yes, she said. They kept me in isolation most of the time, giving me tasks, monitoring every thought. They told me I was special, but they meant it as control. Every moment I longed for freedom, to choose my own path, to experience the world for myself, not as a tool or experiment. Kale felt a profound respect for her. It was one thing to survive in the wilderness, one thing to escape from danger, but to endure isolation, to maintain your mind, your sense of self, despite constant monitoring, required a strength of spirit that few could imagine. Humans had always adapted, survived, and thrived in impossible situations. Myra was living proof of that. The morning passed in quiet exploration. Myra guided Kale to a grove of tall, spiral-shaped trees that bent naturally to form a tunnel of leaves. The ground beneath was firm, perfect for walking. This path leads closer to the outer perimeter, she explained. But we must be careful. They have drones that scan for unusual heat signatures and movement patterns. Kale studied the grove. I can handle the drones. But we'll need a plan if we encounter any obstacles we cannot see. Myra nodded. We'll adapt just like humans always do. We use what we have, think ahead, and stay alert. As they moved, Kale noticed the subtleties of Myra's interactions with the forest. She didn't just walk, she observed, touched, and listened. She paused to examine a plant whose leaves had a faint glow, bending them carefully to release a soft pollen into the air. This helps mask our heat signatures from the sensors, she explained. It's not magic, just understanding and observation. Kale smiled. Humans truly were remarkable. While other species relied on instinct or strength, humans combined curiosity, intelligence, and creativity to achieve what seemed impossible. Myra's example was a living testament to that idea. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a vast valley. Beyond it lay the station, its buildings partially hidden by the fog and the natural shapes of the landscape. Kale could see small drones hovering in the distance, moving in patterns that were predictable, almost mechanical. We'll have to cross that valley carefully, he said. If we're detected, they'll alert others. Myra crouched beside him. There's a pattern to their patrols. Watch the shadows they cast. The valley is safest when the sun is at its highest. The sensors are calibrated for lower light. We'll move then. Kale nodded. You've thought of everything. Myra smiled faintly. I've had a long time to think. I've had to survive on intelligence alone. Strength and speed are not enough when every move is observed. They waited, resting in the shade of the ridge, observing the valley below. Kale marveled at Myra's ability to analyze, predict, and plan. It was a skill humans had developed over millennia. While some species relied on instincts or power, humans built civilizations, created technology, and navigated complexities far beyond simple survival. Myra was a microcosm of that potential, small in number but limitless in possibility. As the sun reached its peak, they began their careful descent. The ground was soft and uneven, but Kale followed Myra's lead. Step by step, they moved in sync, using the natural folds of the land to hide themselves. When a drone hovered nearby, Myra whispered instructions. Move to the shadow of a tree, stay still, breathe slowly. The drone passed without noticing them. Kale realized something important as they moved. Humans were not just survivors, they were thinkers, adapters, and problem solvers. Every action Myra took was precise, calculated, and effective. The forest and technology combined, and yet she seemed entirely in control. This was not brute force, this was intellect in motion. Hours passed and they reached a small river that marked the valley's edge. Beyond it, the terrain rose gently, leading to the station's outer limits. We are close, Myra said quietly, but the hardest part is ahead. There are sensors in the water and along the banks. We'll need to distract them. Kale knelt, inspecting the riverbank. He found stones and plants, using them to create small disturbances in the water. The ripples spread, masking their heat signatures from the sensors. Myra moved alongside him, her precision and knowledge complementing his practical skills. Together, they crossed the river safely, arriving on the far bank without alerting any drones. Kale looked at Myra with admiration. You've trained for this your entire life, haven't you? Myra laughed softly. No, not training, observation, necessity. When you have no control over your life, you learn quickly how to regain it, even in small ways. They rested briefly before continuing. As they neared the station, Myra pointed out hidden access paths, natural depressions in the land that blocked line-of-sight sensors, and small tunnels carved over time by animals that could be used to move silently. Kale was impressed. Every step required thought, attention, and ingenuity. Humans, he realized, were capable of turning even the most difficult circumstances to their advantage with creativity alone. Finally, they reached a point where the station's structures were visible but still distant enough to remain unnoticed. Myra turned to Kale. From here, it is a matter of timing, patience, and adaptation. We cannot rush, and we cannot panic. Humans are clever because we anticipate, adjust, and act with precision. That is how we survive and how we thrive. Kale nodded, understanding fully now what she meant. He had trained to capture beings by force, but he had learned something more important. Humans could solve problems without violence, relying on intellect, observation, and collaboration. Myra's freedom depended on those qualities, and he was honored to assist. As they prepared for the final stretch toward the station's perimeter, Kale felt a deep sense of hope. They were not alone. Humans had always found ways to adapt, to overcome, and to succeed in situations that seemed impossible. Myra's courage and intelligence were proof of that. And together, Kale and Myra represented the best of what humanity could achieve: ingenuity, resilience, and the desire for freedom. The sun began to set, casting golden light across the valley. The station lights blinked faintly in the distance, unaware of the two humans moving silently toward a future they had chosen for themselves. Kale and Myra shared a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it with the tools humans had always relied upon: thought, observation, and courage. And with that, they stepped forward, ready to turn the impossible into reality, ready to prove that humans, in their quiet brilliance, could overcome fear, control, and misunderstanding without lifting a hand in violence. Night had fallen over the planet, and the forest around. Kale and Myra was filled with soft shadows and gentle sounds. Every leaf, every ripple in the water seemed alive, moving with the wind and moonlight. The station loomed in the distance, its lights blinking faintly, like watchful eyes in the dark. The final step of their journey was before them. The path ahead was uncertain, but Kale felt a steady confidence he had never experienced on a mission. He was not alone. Myra was beside him, and together they carried the greatest tools humans had: intelligence, creativity, and determination. Myra led the way, moving silently over roots and stones, pointing out spots where the sensor's light beams didn't reach. Kale followed closely, learning from her every movement. She stopped suddenly and crouched near a mound of soft soil. "We need to create a diversion," she whispered. "If we can draw the patrol drones away from the main gates, we can slip inside and access the control center. From there, we can open the gates and leave without anyone noticing." Kale nodded. "How do we do that?" Myra smiled faintly. "It's simple: observation and understanding. Watch and follow my lead." She carefully picked up a few small stones and arranged them in a pattern near the edge of the grove. Kale watched, curious. Myra then activated a small device from her pocket that emitted soft, rhythmic vibrations. The combination of the stones and vibrations caused subtle movement in the nearby plants, creating tiny flickers of light and shadow that mimicked the presence of humans. Soon, a patrol drone hovered toward the diversion, scanning the area for intruders. Myra and Kale waited silently, hidden behind the trees, letting the drone pass their location. "See," Myra whispered. "Humans can manipulate their surroundings to solve problems. We do not need force, we need thought, patience, and timing." Kale smiled. He had witnessed human skill before, but this was extraordinary. Myra had not only survived isolation, but had mastered her environment to turn even the most dangerous situation into a solvable puzzle. He realized that humans' ability to adapt, to observe, and to reason was far more powerful than mere strength or aggression. Carefully, they made their way to the station's outer gates. The perimeter was lined with sensors, lights, and cameras, but Myra's knowledge guided them perfectly. She led Kale through hidden depressions in the land, under small overhangs, and along narrow paths that kept them out of the line of sight. Every step was deliberate, every movement precise. Finally, they reached the main gate. Kale could see the control panel faintly glowing in the darkness. Myra stepped forward, placing her hand on the interface. "This is where the real test begins," she said. "We must be clever." Humans have always solved problems with intelligence, even when others thought it impossible. She began interacting with the controls, entering sequences of movements and commands that seemed almost like a dance. Lights flickered and sensors blinked, but the system did not trigger any alarms. Kale watched, amazed. "How do you know what to do?" he asked quietly. "I observe patterns, understand logic, and think ahead," Myra explained. The station assumes fear and confusion will stop intruders, but humans are capable of seeing beyond what others expect. We can solve problems they cannot imagine. Within minutes, the gates began to open silently. Myra looked at Kale. "We're free to go, but we must move quickly. The patrol drones will soon return to their paths." They slipped through the gate and moved toward the forest beyond. The night was quiet, filled with the gentle hum of the planet's life. Kale felt a thrill of joy and relief. They were free not because of strength or weapons, but because of thought, intelligence, and trust. Humans had always excelled when they relied on their minds, and Myra was living proof. As they moved deeper into the forest, Myra began to share her dreams. "I want to explore," she said softly. "To see stars up close, to understand other civilizations, to learn, to create, and to live without being controlled." Kale listened, inspired. Her dreams were not selfish or small. They were full of curiosity, courage, and hope. Humans, he thought, had always reached for more than survival. They reached for knowledge, for understanding, for freedom. Myra embodied everything that made humans extraordinary. They reached a river that flowed quietly through the forest, its waters glowing faintly under the moonlight. Myra paused, looking at the reflection. "This is where I began," she said. "I was trained to follow rules, to obey, to never question, but I learned something important. Freedom is not given. It is earned through thought, patience, and courage." Kale nodded. "And you earned it tonight," Myra smiled. "We earned it together. Humans have always been strongest when they collaborate, when they use their minds and hearts, not their fists." They rested by the river for a moment, listening to the soft murmur of water and the distant calls of the forest creatures. Kale felt a deep sense of pride. Humans had always been underestimated by others, seen as fragile or weak. Yet here was proof that intelligence, compassion, and creativity could overcome any obstacle. Myra's freedom was a testament to human potential. As they continued their journey, Kale noticed the changes in the forest. Paths that had seemed difficult now appeared easier. Shadows that had hidden potential dangers were now guides. It was as if the planet itself recognized human ingenuity, helping them navigate safely. Kale realized that humans were capable of working with nature, learning from it, and using understanding to thrive in harmony with the world. By dawn, they had reached the edge of the forest, overlooking a valley filled with soft mist and distant mountains. Myra looked out across the landscape, her eyes bright with hope. "This is just the beginning," she said. "I want to see the stars, to meet others like us, to explore and learn. Humans have always sought more than survival. We seek growth, understanding, and freedom." Kale nodded. He had come to this planet expecting to capture a monster, but he had found something far more remarkable. A human spirit unbroken, capable of overcoming fear, control, and expectation. Humanity, he realized, was not defined by strength alone, but by creativity, courage, and the desire to understand and explore. They began their journey toward a distant settlement where Myra could find safe passage. Along the way, they encountered natural obstacles, fallen trees, rivers, uneven terrain, but each challenge was met with thought, observation, and collaboration. Kale marveled at Myra's ability to turn problems into solutions. Humans were clever, resilient, and adaptable in ways no one could anticipate. As they walked, Kale asked, "Do you ever wonder what others will think of your story?" Myra smiled. "Let them think what they will. Humans are defined by their actions, not the expectations of others. Our creativity, our intelligence, our compassion, these are what matter. I have learned to trust in these qualities, and they have guided me to freedom." Kale felt a sense of awe. He had trained for years to follow orders, to capture what others labeled dangerous. But he had learned something far more important. Human ingenuity, patience, and empathy could solve problems that no amount of force could. Myra was living proof. By midday, they reached the settlement. Myra's presence was greeted with curiosity and wonder. She spoke of the forest, the station, and the strategies they had used to navigate it. People listened, captivated by her intelligence, creativity, and courage. Kale watched with pride. This was what humanity was capable of when it relied on its mind, heart, and determination. Myra turned to Kale. "Thank you," she said softly. "Without you, I might never have realized the full potential of freedom." Kale smiled. "No, Myra, you did this yourself. Humans have always found a way when others thought it impossible. I only helped you see what you already had." As the sun set, casting golden light across the valley, Kale and Myra looked out across the horizon. The forest behind them was alive with quiet energy, and the station was far behind. They had faced uncertainty, deception, and challenges without conflict or violence. Instead, they had relied on thought, observation, and collaboration, qualities that had defined humans for generations. Kale realized that this mission, which had begun as a simple task to capture a creature, had transformed into a celebration of humanity. Humans were remarkable, not because of power or strength, but because of their courage, creativity, and compassion. Myra was a living symbol of that truth. And as they walked toward the future, free to explore and learn, Kale understood something profound. Humans could overcome fear, control, and misunderstanding not by fighting, but by thinking, observing, and acting with intelligence and heart. The galaxy might fear humans for their unpredictability, but in truth, that unpredictability was a gift, a sign of limitless potential. Myra looked up at the sky where stars sparkled like diamonds. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "There is so much to see, so much to learn, and we will face it together using everything that makes us human." Kale nodded, filled with hope. Humans had always reached for the stars, not because they were forced to, but because curiosity, courage, and determination were part of their nature. Myra was living proof of that legacy. And together, they stepped forward into the unknown, carrying the quiet brilliance of humanity with them. A brilliance that could light the darkest places, solve the most difficult problems, and achieve freedom in ways no one had imagined. The journey had been difficult, the challenges immense, but Kale and Myra had succeeded, not through violence, not through force, but through the very qualities that made humans extraordinary. They had proven in their own quiet way that humanity's greatest strength lay in intelligence, creativity, courage, and the unyielding desire for freedom. And the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter for them, as if celebrating the triumph of human potential and the power of a free spirit.